Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and to Medical Mondays, the weekly series where we talk about really niche medical topics. If you're new here, my name is Ali and I'm a junior doctor working in Cambridge, and today we're talking about the Academic Foundation Programme, the AFP, specifically how to prepare for the critical appraisal component of the AFP. Now, I say this all the time for this mini-series, this is really niche. It's aimed exclusively at 5th and 6th year medical students in the UK. So if you're not in that category of people, you probably won't find this very helpful. It's basically me and my friend, Mr. Ankur Kajuria, who's a surgeon. He's written books about the AFP and runs a course for the AFP. We're basically talking with a lot of jargon and stuff about how to prepare for this station of the interview where you're being asked to critically appraise a paper. So if this is relevant for you, then hopefully you'll find this useful. If not, then you might find it entertaining anyway. So yeah, we're going to cut to me and Ankur from 6 months ago where we're talking about how to prepare for the critical appraisal bit of the AFP interview. Enjoy.
So I'll give you an example. For example, in Oxford, they commonly like to ask, tell us about a paper you've read recently.
Oh,
okay.
It's a tricky one.
Now, if you haven't read a paper recently,
yeah.
At one of the most prestigious academic institutions in the UK, that does not come across well, okay? Now, when I went to my interview, or my friends went to their interviews, they had spoken with people who had done the Oxford interview before, and they had prepared not just one, but 2 papers. And, you know, it's essentially a critical appraisal that you're doing of those papers, but it's much nicer in a way because you've almost prepared it beforehand. So you're not getting a paper or an abstract to read beforehand like you do, for example, in London, but you've already read this paper. You can talk about the biases, you can talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the paper, and whether it would subsequently inform your clinical practice.
Okay, so as Ankur said, in some places you have to talk about papers you've already read in advance. In London and in a few other places, they give you the abstract on the day. Yep. And then you have to be able to critically appraise the abstract. Yeah. And in my interview, in the feedback we got afterwards, it was the critical appraisal station that I really fell down on. I did all right in the clinical emergencies because I'd memorized the Oxford Handbook, whereas I didn't really know what to do for critical appraisal, and that's what I really wish I'd discovered this book sooner. You should get this book. Can you tell us how does one go about preparing for this critical appraisal?
Sure. So critical appraisal is all about practice. So especially a lot of people applying for the AFP have done a little bit of research, but may not necessarily have had the critical appraisal skills taught to them, firstly, and even if they did, it would just be in passing. As a sort of module of a particular course. Or,
we did like one lecture in stats that PICO or something, and like no one cares about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So most people don't really have that experience, and the key to getting comfortable with this stuff is just to read lots and lots of abstracts, I'm afraid. So for me, I used to look at the New England Journal abstracts. They used to have lots of randomized trials. So randomized control trial is probably what you're going to get in your critical appraisal, certainly in London.
Yeah,
that's a trend. You can get sort of cohort studies and some weird and wonderful things, but generally it's going to be a randomized control trial that you're going to be asked to critically appraise. And actually, the more you practice before the interview, the more comfortable you'll be in the in the interview. There is a way to sort of go about critical appraising. Everyone has their own way. I've sort of developed my own and a way of doing it, which I feel comfortable with, which again I've documented in here. And you're more than welcome to follow that approach, or you can develop one of your own approaches, whichever way is more comfortable. But you need to cover some key areas, which again, I'm happy to go through.
Yeah, well, what are the key areas?
Fine. So you need to be able to quickly summarize the paper, firstly, or the abstract that you've been given. So let's pick an example. So you can say something like, this is a double-blind, multi-center, randomized controlled trial comparing drug X to drug Y. The primary endpoint was X. The secondary endpoint was this. The primary safety outcome was this. Overall, the paper shows this. And in terms of generalizability, something like that, very quick. And then you can take one or two directions there. So once you've kind of presented your summary, it depends how confident you are. You can carry on talking, or you can wait for the examiner to then lead the conversation. Essentially up to you. But as you mentioned, the PICO framework is a really nice way to find out what the research question is. So, patient population, what the intervention is, the comparator, and the outcome. And then generally you need to talk about biases, so things like selection bias, and how you can address those biases with randomization, allocation, concealment, and lots of other things which I won't bore you with, but it's all in textbooks and as I mentioned in here. And once you've talked about biases, then you need to talk about two key aspects really: internal and external validity. Okay, internal validity is essentially more related to the biases, whereas the external validity is about generalizability. So whether this study, the results from this study, can be applicable to your own patient population. So, and they commonly will ask you this question. So you've read the paper, you've presented the abstract, and then they will say, do you think this will change your practice? So imagine you're a consultant in 15 years' time. Do you think you'll start using this treatment? How would you approach that? Just throw it back to you. Put you on the spot.
How would I approach that? I would look at the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
I would see what their patient group was,
Okay.
and see whether it matches on with my patient group. For example, if I'm a consultant in the UK and this RCT was done in Vietnam, it it might not be applicable.
Sure.
So I'd be looking at the patient group. I'd be looking to see what two things were compared.
Yep.
In that, are we comparing existing treatment against something new, or two things that I wouldn't be using anyway? Anything else?
No, that's pretty good. So the key to critical appraisal is to say that one paper is not going to change your practice. That's never the case, unless it's a groundbreaking, paper that's going to revolutionize things. Generally, in current literature, one paper is not going to change your practice. You need to look at what else is out there, maybe think about doing a systematic review to really inform your clinical practice and to see whether there are any gaps in the data. That will lead to more research.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And you can say that, and you can look at the patient population, your patient population groups, whether they're similar to your patient population, and but generally, I would avoid saying, yes, I would change my practice
Right.
based on this one paper.
Yeah. And just so that this doesn't completely seem like a sales pitch, apart from your book, which you guys should get, can you recommend any other resources that might help for this critical appraisal thing?
Sure. So for critical appraisal, there is lots of stuff from Cochrane.
Yeah.
Well, the Cochrane collaboration, based out in Oxford, which I'm kind of sort of working with at the moment.
Check you out.
Cut that out. But they've developed some checklists that you can use. The only problem with checklists are you can come across quite formulaic in the interview. Yeah. So you want critical appraisal to come quite naturally in terms of working through the abstract, and it should kind of just flow rather than saying, this is a randomized controlled trial. Tick. Bias-wise, tick.
Okay.
You don't want to come across like that.
Okay.
And it will tell the examiner that you're literally following a checklist, which is not the way to go.
And I guess that just comes from practice then, doesn't it?
Correct.
The more you do it, the more natural you seem while doing
it.
And just to throw another plug in there's a book called How to Read a Paper, which was recommended on this other AFP course that I went on, and I read it cover to cover. It's a really enjoyable and engaging read.
And the green cover?
I can't remember. I illegally downloaded the PDF. I legally downloaded a PDF somewhere on the internet. But yeah, I would recommend it. It's good. It's fun to read. So that brings us to the end of this critical appraisal thing. Okay, so that was how you prepare for the critical appraisal bit of the AFP interview. As usual, I'll leave links to all of the stuff we talked about in the video description, including Ankur's book and his course. The book's pretty good. I didn't go on the course myself, but I've heard it's good. So yeah, hopefully you like this video and gain something from it. In the next video, which is going to be the final video in this mini-series about the AFP, we're going to be talking about how to prepare for the personal interview, because like when I interviewed at EBH, that was an exclusively personal interview. There was nothing fancy academically about it. And lots of other places have a personal interview, so hopefully that'll be useful. And we also talk about other resources that you might find helpful. So if you like that, you can check out the next video. The whole series will be linked in the video description. But yeah, thank you for watching. watching. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. I make videos about life of a junior doctor these days and about tech stuff and stuff like that, so you might find that vaguely interesting. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.